In today's video, I'll show you how to make a couple different versions of the Rosette Nebula. One will be in the Hubble palette, and the other will be in an HSO palette. Now I have two targets tonight. The first target is the Rosette Nebula. And I've been waiting to do this for a while. I've shot it in the past, but when I did that, I had a small planetary mono camera. It wasn't really much of a camera. And I've been itching to do this with my new mono camera. I have the ASI 294mm Pro, which is the sister to the MC Pro, which I bought about 4 or 5 months ago. So the reason this is so great is that it fits it's a big image, and you can see right here, it fits the frame really well. It's big, it's bright, it's full of detail, has tons of hydrogen gas, and it is an excellent target for anybody that wants to get a good image fairly quickly. And so I have waited for weeks and weeks and weeks because of all the bad weather, and I'm finally going to get a chance to shoot it, along with the other one, which is the Christmas tree cluster, which I will do probably next, the video next. But I also am processing this one, and the reason I picked these two is because they're so close together. So I'm going to do one then the other, and the way it works is that I can see the Rosette Nebula first based on the obstructions that I have. So I'm going to do an hour of this, and then about 3 hours of the Christmas tree, and then the next night I'm going to go back and do the same thing. And then I'm going to get 2 images at once. And that's a great strategy if you have an obstruction problem. If you don't have an obstruction problem, I would recommend just one target and do one target really, really well. But I really want them both, and I don't have a great deal of opportunity other than these 2 nights. So I'm going to go ahead and do it this way so that I can get some data on both of them. It has been raining for a long time, but there is a little break in the weather. However, the air is extremely humid, so I'm going to use this new dew heater, and I'm testing it out, and it works great. Alright, so here's the setup. Here's my new dew heater, and I've got the cable going directly to the ASI air, so there's a nice short power cable. I can't really see it because of the garage door, but that's going to keep the dew down and get my best image possible from a dew perspective. And then I've got the autofocuser here, and then here's my new camera imaging train setup. This is the new ASI 294mm Pro cooled camera. And I've got the filter wheel here. That's also an ASI filter wheel. And for the filters, I'm using, I'll have to check, but I believe that those filters are ZWO, HA, S2, and O3. I have to check. Now right here is my flattener. I've got a field flattener, and I highly recommend a field flattener because you want to have a wider image for this, and if you didn't have it with this particular focal length, it'd be too close to the Rosette Nebula, and then you'd have to do a mosaic. So the flattener brings that out quite a bit. And then I've got a guide camera. This is the 120mm, and the guide scope, I believe that's an SB Boney guide scope as I recall. And then my telescope is an SB Boney S503 ED, and that's an 80mm aperture. And then as far as the tracking goes, this is the Skywatcher EQM35 Pro, and so that's the equipment I'm going to use. Now, I didn't take any images of the actual image capture because I was just scrambling around trying to get this done. But here is what I have. I shot for 2 nights, and I was able to get 10 images of hydrogen alpha, and looks like about 9 for oxygen, and looks like 10 for sulfur 2. All right, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to process this in Sirl, and then I'm going to create the 2 images. I'm going to create an HSO image, which is a natural, which goes from hydrogen being the longest wavelength and more red, to the sulfur is green and the oxygen blue. That's being natural. And then I'm going to do the Hubble palette where we reverse the hydrogen with the sulfur. But let's go over to Siril and let's process the hydrogen, and I'll show you how to do this. All right, so there's the Rosette Nebula, and we're going to do hydrogen. So I've got 4 folders. If we go back and we look at the data, you'll see that I have biases, darks, flats, and lights. And the biases can be the same for all of your images, and the darks as well, but they have to match the length of time that you're shooting. So I am going to shoot 300-second lights, and so I have 300-second darks. Make sure you don't make that mistake, because I have done that mistake in the past, and I've done 600-second shots with 300-second darks and ruins everything. So you got to go back and have the right darks. Now the flats are filter specific. So these are the hydrogen flats, and then the corresponding oxygen sulfur flats I also took as well. And so I've got roughly 20 of them or something like that. So in Siril, it's really simple. You set the home directory like we just did. That's going to be, you can see right there that's already set to the hydrogen. And then I say scripts mono right here, and then we run through the script. So I'll let that run and we'll come back in just a sec. All right, the total execution time, 2 minutes 47, not bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up that resulting image. And in a linear mode, you can't see anything. Maybe you can see some dots. I don't really see anything. But we go over here to this button and press the auto stretch. And this will give us a preview. And as you can see, the Rosette Nebula has tons of hydrogen gas. I just love this image. Now, what I do, you really don't need to process anything beyond this right now. What I typically do is I will save the image. I'll go back to linear, and I'll do a histogram transformation so that I have a JPEG image, just so that I can look at it. And so we just do an auto stretch, apply, and then I just save this so that I can compare it to the night after night, and I can see the progress, and I'll show you that right now. So we go over here and you can see the progress photos. I call it the STR. So the first night I had 1500 seconds, and then the next night I had 3000 seconds. So let me cycle back, because now they'll be in memory, and you can see that it doubled the exposure roughly. It made a higher contrast image, more detail, and we can do the same thing for oxygen. You can see the difference. We cycle back and forth. And for sulfur. First night, second night. You can see the image gets stronger and stronger. Now the next thing I do is I create a folder called RGB. And here what you want to do is you want to put in your linear unstretched images, the hydrogen alpha, oxygen, and sulfur, and you can see that Siril tells you the total integration time. And so we put those in there, and then I'll show you how to do this in Siril. Now these images are not aligned, so let's go back and we can open this up with a Fits viewer. Now as we cycle through there, see they're going to shift a little bit. They're close, but they shift a little bit. And so what we need to do, you can't combine them into a color image right there, because if you did, none of the stars would align and would just be a big blurry image. However, we can fix that. We go over to the Conversion tab here in Siril, and so we are going to create a sequence. So I'm going to put them in the order that I want to remember them. I'm going to put the hydrogen first, then I'm going to go down and do sulfur, so it's be HS, and then I'm going to add oxygen, so that's going to be in the order HSO. The reason I do that is so I can keep it straight. I'm going to call the sequence HSO, same order that I loaded them. Alright, so we say convert. Now Siril creates this sequence, and we don't have anything to show that because we need to register the data. And what does registering do? Well, that aligns the stars, and that gives us 3 new images that are aligned. So we're going to say go register here on the nearest neighbor. And we are done. Now, how do we create a color image? There are a couple ways. You can do You can do this in Photoshop, you can do this in Gimp. There are a number of different ways. There are two methods right here within Sirl. One is called RGB composing, and then you would open up each file and assign them to a color. And so that's a good way of doing it, but what I'm going to do in this particular instance is I'm going to do what's called pixel math, and the reason I'm going to do it is because it makes your organization a lot easier, it's more powerful, and it's quick, because I'm going to do two images. I'm going to do an HSO and an SHO. So I don't want, I'm going to unclick that, which is a single expression, and then this little plus sign right here. So we can just go and you look here and it's like, all right, we had our original ones, result, result, and result. And now we have R underscore HSO underscore 2, 3, and 1. What does that mean? This one is hydrogen, that's sulfur, and that's oxygen. Now the great thing about pixel math is that you don't even have to remember that, but I'm in the habit of doing this 1, 2, 3 in case I want to use the RGB composing. So we just say open, and look at that. I've already assigned the variables because Siril has the metadata for those FITS images. And so now we have a variable sulfur for the sulfur, oxygen and hydrogen, they all correspond correctly. And you can see HA1, sulfur 2, oxygen 3. Now you have a powerful tool that you can play around with, and you can do both of the compositions without a lot of effort. So for one thing, let's do a natural one. So we're going to do hydrogen alpha for red. We just say hey, HA. We say S little I, 2 little i's for green, and O3 for blue, and say apply. This will be an even distribution of each one of those. And you can play around with this to any degree of creativity that you want to do. So we'll go over here. And you say, wait a minute, I don't see anything. Well, look down, we're on the linear tab. So we go to the auto stretch. And now we have our first rough image. And you can see the colors are pretty whacked out, but that's okay. So I'm just going to say apply. Now, how do we do this? Here's an easy way. So we're in auto stretch, so we're in a linear mode. The preview is what we're looking at. The first thing I like to do is do a background extraction. And because we did this from a mono image, this tool is powerful enough to affect all 3 channels. That's why you don't need to stretch this ahead of time. There are 2 ways you could do it. You could generate a grid, but I like to just put in some points not on stars and not on the nebula. First I go around the edge, and I'm just carefully clicking in here. If you accidentally click on a star, you can really mess up the background, so don't do that. So there's a little delay here because I'm about out of memory because I'm recording and doing this at the same time. So there's a nice even distribution. As you can see, I missed this on purpose. And then I come in around the nebula and I add points, not on stars. We'll let this catch up. It's a little slow. Alright, it is caught up, and then we say compute background. Alright, it's done. It took a little bit of time because I'm exhausting all the resources on my computer. And this is basically the preview image of the background extraction. If you are not happy with it, you can do it again. But I'm happy with it, so I'm going to say apply. Alright, now the next thing I want to do is that I need to color calibrate this. So I go to image processing, color calibration, photometric calibration. And all I need to do with Siril is just hit the OK button. And the reason is because it's going to extract the metadata right from the FITS files. It knows it's the Rosette Nebula. So we can drag this aside and we should see that this has succeeded. And then it has succeeded, and so we just say close because we've already done OK. Now the next thing here I want to do is try and get rid of this green cast that we have. So we say image processing, green noise, and then I'm going to accept the defaults and just say apply. All right, that's done. We close this out. I did forget to crop because it was so close. I should have done that before I processed. I'm going to go into selection and say preserve ratio. I didn't even notice it because the tracking was so good. But nonetheless, you should have done that, or I should have done that before. Oh well. So now we're ready now to do our stretch. And so we're going to go back into a linear mode. And you can do this a number of different ways. You could do StarNet processing. You could do general histogram, generalized hyperbolic stretch. I am just going to take the quick and dirty way out because I like it. And I'm going to hit this button right here in the histogram transformation. A lot of people don't like that button, but I like it. And now you just export this as a JPEG. I've already done it. You just say download, and then I just put in a JPEG on here. A lot of people do TIFFs. That's fine. It's a little bit bigger, but I've already exported it. So I just say like HSO, and then I put JPEG on it. And then you want to do 100% quality for sure. And like I said, a lot of people do TIFFs, but I just do JPEG for something like this. Now while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and create the rough image for the SHO, and then I'll process them both at the end. Now here's why I like pixel math. All I have to do with pixel math now is just simply swap the red for the sulfur and the green. And so we'll make the green hydrogen alpha and just say apply. Put this in auto stretch so we can see it. And hit close. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do a background extraction. We're not going to do green noise though. So I do a background extraction. And then I'm going to do a color calibration, and then we're going to stop. So we say okay. And now we're going to stop. The reason I don't do the green noise is because it'll start to eat up too much of this green. And then we just download this one as well to a JPEG. So here is our HSO image and then our SHO image. Alright, so let's start with the HSO, and I'm going to open with Gimp. I have some other versions here, but it's the same basic procedure. The first thing I like to do is go over to the colors and curves. And here we can set the black point. And right here, if you bring this down right here, that'll immediately change the black point and get rid of a lot of the extra stuff in the background. And then I want a brighter image, but I want a higher contrast. So I'm going to do a curve that looks something like this. And that will give me as dark a background as I can without clipping, and I'm say okay. You can also go one at a time, but I find that that works pretty well. So you can play around with this as much as you want. I'm going to leave it as is. I think it's pretty highly saturated as is, and then we'll move on to the next one. So if we go to the SHO image and then we open that in Gimp, and again, I'm going to start with the curves and adjust that black point. All right. Now here, I want to bring out some of the detail that I can. And so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go to the Hue Saturation tab and do one color at a time and adjust the hue. Now occasionally you won't see anything. Now here I went through one at a time, working my way around, and could really see hardly any difference at all until I got to green. So that's where I'm going to do next. Alright, now the green is where you're going to get the most change. I'm going to bring this hue down a little bit, bring in more sort of the yellows. And now, instead of just a predominantly green image, we can now see some more of the detail here that we couldn't see before. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take it down just a little bit more, see if I can. I'm not sure if I want to go that far. But now we have a more varied image, something more interesting than just green. So I'm going to accept that. Now you have to press OK or else you will lose the thing there. So let's see if there's anything in the yellow that we can do. Yeah, there's quite a bit in the yellow that we can do. And this is all personal preference. I'm not going to go that way, it's too much. This is about where it was. I think bring this down just a little bit. Of course, this is all just subjected to your own personal tastes. But now I can see a lot more of the detail here that was kind of hard to see in the other image here. Let's go back and see that. See, it's pretty hard to see that. And that's why people, I think, they like the Hubble palette, is because you can bring in some more of these details here that were just sort of hard to make out otherwise. And so I think that's pretty pleasing to me. It's slightly different than the first version I did prior to the video, but I think we can go ahead and accept that. So you can see now between the one I did prior to the video and the one I did during the video. And so, you know, I kind of like them both. But I'll just go ahead and put this one on the thumbnail for YouTube just to show you how I made this particular image. But it's the same process. So thanks for watching. If you found that helpful, you can support my channel by subscribing or buying through my product links.